This is my final Sunday that we're looking at the principles. We've looked at all 7 of them. We started actually with the 7th one on our end gathering, and we've looked at the others. And this time it's for number 6. Number 6. Let's share this one together, shall we? We affirm and promote the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Now, when I told a non-UU person that I was doing a sermon on the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, she kind of thought I was kidding and making fun of the Pledge of Allegiance or something. It sounded a little, too perfect, too quirky or something. I said, no, that's really one of our principles. It really is. So, like the others, we're going to unpack it a little bit and see what perhaps the folks that put this together meant, or perhaps what we can gain from it. And we'll have to use our imaginations a little bit because we can't really get into their heads exactly. So first of all, let's take these words. Imagine a goal. Now, for us, usually when we think of a goal, we think of it in athletic terms. Many of us are football fans or basketball fans, so some of us run, and the goal is that finish line, or the goal is that basket that you put the ball into, and you know you've made it. Well, this goal's a little harder than that, isn't it? So goals don't always have to be something where we break the ribbon and we say, yes, we've made it. Jane Thixton helped me understand this a little bit. She says, a goal isn't necessarily something we think we can achieve in our lifetime or even at all. A goal is something to shoot for, something that gives us direction, tells us which way to go. It's sort of like the North Star. If you don't have a compass and you're on a clear night, you can look up at the North Star and get some direction, can't you? Now, Thich Nhat Hanh used this as an example. He says, if I lose my direction, I have to look for the North Star, and I go to the north. That does not mean I expect to arrive at the North Star. I just want to go in that direction. So sometimes a goal gives us the direction to go in. And we know perhaps that we won't see that goal achieved. In fact, many of our heroes and heroines have not seen goals achieved in their lifetimes. Moses did not see the promised land. Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton did not live to see women get the vote. John F. Kennedy didn't see that man walk on the moon, that he said, there's the goal, but he pointed us into that direction. Martin Luther King did not live to see his dream achieved. In fact, we're still working on it. Harvey Milk didn't live to see equality for gay and lesbians and others, did not live to see marriage equality, did not live to see many other things that some of them which we're still working on, but he and others pointed that direction. So very often we know that we're working on goals that we may not have achieved in our lifetime. And that's okay, because there will be others that follow. What is the North Star of our goal, of this goal? What is the North Star of this goal? What is the goal of this principle? The goal of this principle is a pretty big goal. It's the goal of world community. World community. We're talking about everybody in the world in community. Not like some of our earlier principles where we talked about human relationships or the individual. We're now talking about the whole world in community. That's the goal. What's that mean? It's hard to know what it means. I can talk to you a little bit about what it's not, perhaps. I don't think that our Unitarian Universalist folks meant the same thing by world community as perhaps the Baha'is and others do when they talk about unity. I don't think that they could foresee the idea or said that we must work toward the idea that we all had the same language, the same governments perhaps, the same religion, those kinds of things. I don't think that's what they meant by world community. That's what it's not. And world community does not equal economic globalization. Economic globalization has some good things when we think about it. It has some other things we worry about, doesn't it? And it can support world community in some ways, and in some ways we think it might get in the way. But it is not equal to world community. We do know, though, if we're going to have world community, we have to commune. That's what it's about, communing. We have to communicate. World community means that we get to know one another, just like the little girls in the story. We have to talk to one another, to communicate. That's how we come to world community. We need communion. We need communion. Now, what is community, and why do we need it so? I'm going to tell you a story that's attributed to Reverend William Schultz. And this story is about the Middle Ages, and there was a settlement of monks, and in this group of monks, they would have a special retreat privilege that they would go off by themselves, right by themselves, and go to a hermitage and live as a hermit by themselves to study the Bible, to reflect, and then they would come back. And it was a particular monk's time to do that, and he asked the abbot for permission for his time to go to the hermitage. And he went on his way. He got there, and like some folks do, deciding what he wanted to reflect on, he said, well, I'm just going to let the Spirit lead by just opening the Bible and put my finger down and see what it falls on. You ever had a preacher do that? Let's see what I'm preaching about today. I'll open the Bible, put my finger down. So he opened the Bible and put his finger down, and it fell in the verses in John that talk about Jesus washing the disciples' feet. And he read those verses. He meditated on them a couple of days, but then he headed back to the other monk settlement. And the abbot said, well, I wasn't expecting you back so early. What are you doing here so early? And he said, well, whose feet would the hermit wash? He's meditating on this. We need to wash one another's feet. Whose feet would he wash? He realized he needed to be back in community. He needed to have the experience of giving, like an experience of washing feet, of serving, the humility, the generosity of it. Now, my mama, after I was grown, I grew up Southern Baptist, but my mama and daddy, after I was grown, went over and joined Statesboro Primitive Baptist Church. Statesboro Primitive Baptist Church is the largest Primitive Baptist church in the world, right here in Statesboro. We can lay claim to that. We had the largest Primitive Baptist church in the world. So my mom and daddy went over there and joined the Statesboro Primitive Baptist Church, and mama said that because they had friends over there, that really was a big part of the reason, not the theology so much. So they got over to Statesboro Primitive Baptist Church, and mama said that once a year, on the Thursday before Easter, that's the only time they have communion, because they're trying to do it to reflect what Jesus did. So that's when they had their communion with the little, actually they use wine at the Primitive Baptist Church. So it's the only time they drink any wine, but they have a wine maker, official wine maker. They had the little wine and the little crackers and stuff like that. But not only did they do that, they have a foot washing ceremony. They wash one another's feet. The women go into one room and pair up, men in the others, and wash their feet. Now, my mama said that, she'd never done anything like that, but she said it was actually very meaningful because the humility of it, the generosity, the caring, the touching of it was very meaningful for her. She was surprised. She said it was a very wonderful ritual, though, and she enjoyed being a part of it. I've never done a foot washing ritual. I've been down to the mall and let the man wash my feet down there when they give a pedicure. It does feel pretty good. But I have been part of hand washing rituals in churches, UU churches that I've been in sometimes, and that's been very meaningful. It's maybe something we would try sometime. It is a communion. They do it on Communion Day because it's it's giving, sharing. It's a form of communion. Now, I'm not suggesting that we expose our toes in here. But But I think that we can work toward doing many things to build the beloved community. This is what Martin Luther King was talking about. And it starts with the family and moves on to the larger communities. And our goal even suggests that maybe we could build a world community. What we have to do, though, we do have to wash feet, at least metaphorically. And when we wash feet in large groups or small, we serve each other and we hold each other. Sometimes literally, like the folks in my mama's church holding each other's feet, but always spiritually. We come together and we hold one another. Now, we say we do this in families, congregations, communities, but we know we need some help. And frankly, we have to sometimes depend and ask for help from governing bodies, because those are the mechanisms in our society that we set up to sometimes do these things, to help us have some world community. So in Statesboro, we have a city council. In our county, we have county commissioners. We have a state legislature. We have other governing boards. We have the Congress. And then if you move on up, yes, we do have an agency there as well. We have the United Nations. Now, the United Nations is not a perfect institution. There are things I would like to change about it. They haven't asked me yet. So it's not perfect, but it is a vehicle that we can ride in with others and cooperate with others to have world community. And that's what we hope to do. It's true that maybe our folks that wrote this principle might have gotten to the next part by borrowing from the well-known Pledge of Allegiance, because the Pledge of Allegiance ends with the words, "with liberty and justice for all." But as you note, our folks didn't say liberty and justice for all. They added another word. Imagine peace. They put peace in there. And that had to be very deliberate, because liberty and justice for all is so common. You hear it so much. But for them to add peace had to be a very deliberate thing. Peace, liberty, and justice for all. War is a very difficult thing. Now, we as Unitarian Universalists are not officially pacifists. I don't know if you know that or not. Like the Quakers are officially pacifists. We are not. We have some folks who are members and who are Unitarian Universalists who are pacifists. But our denomination is not labeled as a pacifist denomination. We have folks that do go into the military. We are supportive of our troops. We have folks who are military chaplains. And I as well try to be supportive. But it's hard, folks. I really, the older I get, the more I'm convinced that war is just not the answer. It just doesn't. It seems to make things worse. It makes things worse. And with this war on terror, you watch it and you watch what happens. And I picked this up because I do think sometimes war is terror. We end up terrorizing folks as we have our war on terror. Now we say that the war in Afghanistan is over. That was our longest war, 13 years that the United States has ever been in, and finally over. But you folks sitting here know that just last week we buried Chester McBride in Statesboro. Wars don't have clear beginnings and endings. Wars don't have clear sides, clear uniforms, anything. And it's very, very difficult now because of the suicidal attempts and very successful. How do you do that when someone's willing to give their life for their cause? It's very, very difficult to fight traditional kinds of wars. But peace itself, we know, is more than just no war. We can talk about war, but peace, when our founders, when our folks that did our principles talked about peace, they were not just talking about no war. They were talking about something greater than that. Greater than that. Because we know that peace really begins individually within each of us and then moves forward. As that old song says, let there be peace on earth. And what? And let it begin with me. It has to begin with us. By us finding some inner peace. And then finding ways to work with our families and communities without conflict. So we have peace. The next word is liberty. Imagine liberty. Well, here she is, Lady Liberty, holding her light, welcoming folks in, supposedly. Come on. Have some freedom here. Liberty means being free. We Unitarian Universalists love freedom. We've talked about it in other principles, not being fenced in, being able to be free. Not have, like those little girls had that fence there. Tear that fence down. Give me some liberty. Give me some freedom. But we also know that it comes with lots of responsibility, doesn't it? And we're accepting of that. That you can't just be free to do anything, although there's some folks who want to do that. But we can imagine liberty. And then imagine justice. Here's the other lady. Lady Justice. We also talked about justice when we had our second principle, when we talked about justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. I wanted to say that right. But that was talking about justice between people, working with human relations between people. We're talking about now justice as it relates to world community. How can we have justice in our whole world, in our world community? I see some glimmers of hopes with some things some organizations are trying to do related to things like environmental justice and economic justice. We know it's necessary, so there's some work on it. So we have peace, liberty, and justice. And I pulled up and copied this particular symbol. This is a triquetra. I hope I'm saying that right. I can say more easily Celtic knot. But you have the three. I like it because they all go together. You don't have one without the other. They're interconnected and intertwined. Peace, liberty, and justice. Which does come first? Do you have peace, or do you have liberty, or have justice? Does liberty and justice cause peace? They're intertwined. Here's an example of that. This is a t-shirt that I have. I was wearing it when I was on my little vacation, sitting on my bed working on this sermon. So I took a picture there. It says, this t-shirt belongs to the Unitarian Universalists for Economic Justice. It says, the price of peace is economic justice for all. The price of peace is economic justice for all. And then we've seen these chants, especially by the Black Lives Matter group, saying, no justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. Well, which comes first, no justice or no peace? Martin Luther King said, let me quote him exactly, there can be no justice without peace, and there can be no peace without justice. Can we have liberty and justice without peace? Or do we have peace because we have liberty and justice? As you folks know, I'm a big supporter of marriage equality and a big defender of it now that we have it. So I especially love this little poster with Lady Liberty and Lady Justice. There they are with this passionate kiss. Liberty and justice together. And because we have that now, I have envisioned this metaphor because I heard some scientific research done just this past week. They've done it with mice now and predict it for humans, where we'll now be able to have, two women can now have a baby that has the DNA from both of them, okay? They've done it with mice, it's coming, you know. So my vision is liberty and justice uniting and conceiving peace. They're in a relationship together and they conceive peace. Now that's a trinity that even a Unitarian can embrace. So here's the last part of it though. Imagine for all. The goal of the world community with peace, liberty, and justice is for all, for everybody. For everybody. Where really and truly all lives do matter. Where black lives matter. Muslim lives matter. Those little children that were down here, their lives matter. And children all over the world. Older folks' lives matter. Folks with disabilities matter. Folks that are different than us matter. Even right-wing conservatives matter. All lives matter. Everybody, for all. Peace, liberty, and justice for all. Can you work for something like that? Is that a possibility? Is that a goal that you think we can really have? Is it unrealistic? I have a friend that says that he's going to work on it. Many of you know Francis Johnson. He's the president of the NAACP. He's also the minister of our partner church and service, Magnolia Missionary Baptist Church. Here he is with his sons. The old one is Thurgood Marshall Johnson, and the younger one is Langston Hughes Johnson. Here he's reading them. He posted something on December 28th that I asked permission from him this past weekend to share with you, and he gave me permission to share it. So you may not be able to read it, and I'm going to read it to you. I did a screenshot. This came actually from Facebook. He said, "Today I shared the Tamir Rice no indictment decision of the grand jury with Thurgood, my 8-year-old. He looked me in the eyes and said, 'Now I see why you will not allow me to play with toy guns.' He then slowly looked down and away. At 8 years old, he realized today that I cannot protect him from a deadly encounter with law enforcement. I cannot even assure him that his untimely death will be redressed. We continued to talk, and I found myself going through sin, hate, the origins of white supremacy, the rise of the police following the Civil War, the explosion of felonies and the connection of the franchise, the good and bad of capitalism and the politics of respectability." He listened, and then he asked 2 questions that brought me to silence. He asked, "Can it change?" And, "What are you willing to do to change it?" With faith, I shared that it was not always this way and will not always be this way. He asked, "Who will change the way that it is?" I told him, "We will." He looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Or die trying." How about us? Are we willing to work for a goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all? Or die trying? Or die trying? I am. Because of my privilege, though, I don't have as many worries and concerns as Thurgood and Francis do about that. More than likely, I'm going to live to be an old lady. You know? More than likely. But I do want to die trying. I do want to die looking at that North Star goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, and I do want to die trying. Now, I'm no Rosa Parks or someone else that can make this huge difference in the world. I have my own little small sphere. But in my own little way, I want to go to my grave moving to that goal. I'm serious, really. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us and the world will live as one. Namaste.